Welcome, everyone, to this week's NIM community call. I have something very exciting for you guys, which has been coming for quite some time. So very excited to finally being able to put it together. So first of all, let's start with the man who needs no introduction. So Harry Halpin, the CEO and founder of NIM. Hi there, Harry. Thanks for taking the time to join us. And someone who may need introduction to some of you, and the meat and potatoes, so to say, of our call today is Blake, mess up my words, Blake Benthall, who's the former operator of Silk Road 2.0. How is it going, sir? Welcome to the call.
Yeah, doing great. Grateful to be in a spot to speak to the NIM community, and thanks for inviting me.
Yep. So I just before the call, I looked at our history on Signal, and our group actually was created almost a year ago. So it's been really a long time coming, but we're busy people, so it took a while to get together. But finally, we're having this conversation. So we're going to do a few things. Obviously, we're going to be introducing Blake to you guys, who's a pretty interesting character. So as you may imagine, he has some pretty cool stories from his past. But importantly, we're also going to be talking about the NIM terms of service. So as you know, operators, NIM infrastructure operators, have to sign or agree to a terms of service, which stipulates that they can't spy on users, basically, of the NIM mixnet. We're going to be talking about why that's important with Blake, who's as you will find is the ideal person to talk about this.
Yeah, so I want to give a little bit of background, if that's okay, Sudo. So when we were running up the NIM node network, one thing we're very worried about is, of course, attacks on users by nation state actors or other kinds of nefarious actors who want to obviously copy data, de-anonymize users, all sorts of things. That would sort of defeat the purpose of why you would build an anonymizing network in the first place. And at a kind of, I think it was an event called Stand with Privacy, I met Blake, and Blake was interested in NIM. We had a long discussion, and it's really Blake's kind of thinking that influenced us to say, well, look, we do need some kinds of terms of service just to make NIM harder to attack. And I think some cypherpunks would say, well, look, we don't want any kinds of legal agreements, any kinds of, we just trust code. And I agree that's true. But I actually want to strike it a bit broader. I think in NIM, we are hackers, we are cypherpunks. We want to use any tool within our power to defend our users from attack. And so I kind of view code as what we primarily trust, but it doesn't prevent us from using legal agreements to basically bind the hands as much as possible of various malicious authorities, particularly government authorities. And I think that's very important. While, of course, code is more inescapable, and I'd rather trust mathematics than the law, at the same point, if we complete anything we can do, the better. And I'm a big fan of what I call defense in death. So defense in death says, look, you defend yourself with cryptography, you defend yourself with statistics, such as creation of noise or fake packets, and you defend yourselves, particularly if it's pretty easy, with legal contracts as well. Anything we can do to defend users, because that's kind of like our mission. And I would say Blake kind of made me think about that, and I really thank Blake for that. And then I ran into him 2 weeks ago, I think, at a meeting with the Zcash meeting, and I said, yeah, we should just do a phone call, because I don't think a lot of people understand why we're doing this and how important it is to have something like a terms of service.
Yeah, and I could jump in and give a quick overview of my background too. So I was 25, living in San Francisco when Ross Ulbricht got arrested for running the Silk Road 1. And I had never used Bitcoin, had never used Tor, and these technologies I'd heard about, but it was just fascinating to me that people were able to buy and sell things on this like alternate internet of Tor, and do so confidently. And then the US government took the site down, which was also like, well, how did that happen? So I dove in pretty deep, just hopping on the forums right after Ross's arrest. I'd never met him, which is weird because we've been hanging out in kind of some of the same circles, like at Noise Bridge in San Francisco. It's in the hacker spaces. And the cultural moment was the series finale to Breaking Bad had just aired maybe a few nights before, and I was just really tempted to initially relaunch the forum and help everyone continue communicating in the Silk Road community. Again, super fun using Tor and eventually using Bitcoin, but of course, like I went down the slippery slope of rebuilding and relaunching the Silk Road marketplace itself, which I ran for a year. And it was a very, very wild, hard journey in a lot of ways. Kept that completely secret from all my, friends and family. Had never had any like street smarts or experience with OPSEC, like keeping a secret. So plenty of mistakes were made on my side. And ultimately, I was arrested a year after launching it by the FBI. They showed up at my house, and it was a very bad day. And I ended up getting into, I'm a startup guy, right? So I dropped college, moved to San Francisco and do tech companies. So I immediately shifted into pitch mode and was just trying to convince the agents or anyone I could run into on the government side of like, please do not let me, rot away in jail for the rest of my life. Like, give me something to do. And I was desperate, right? It's facing 10-year mandatory minimum to life. And then Ross Ulbricht was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences while I was in jail. Very hard for me to hear that. So the U.S. government, then also my parents, like coming from a middle class family that was able to, they poured their retirement into my legal defense. The greatest act of love, really. So me pitching the inside, my lawyer pitching the outside, worked out in a really rare agreement where I got released on bail to essentially like help the FBI by teaching them what Bitcoin is, teaching them the basics. Like I like to joke that, thankfully there's a lot that they didn't know at that time, about like even AWS and cloud architecture, where like people's imaginations go wild and are like, okay, like you were helping the FBI. What does that mean? Like, were you backdooring encryption? Were you logging people? And thankfully, no. Like, I was able to stay within my own ethics as an actual privacy advocate, but help catch bad actors that definitely exist. Like, there was a bomb threat on a New York school where I helped them identify, like who was getting the ransom because they were using Bitcoin, and I got this weird behind the scenes glimpse at, of course, the tools that investigators are using, which are all commercial off-the-shelf tools, right? It's not, at least on the domestic law enforcement side, it's not some crazy, spooky, it's not the stuff that our peers go wild about as cypherpunks and builders in the space. It's actually like you just sign up for, Chainalysis and Palantir and some of this stuff. And I've seen all those tools. So it made me very passionate. Like I ended up having an incredible outcome where I only had to spend 8 months in jail, which is an outcome I hope many more builders get. Like, I'm all about criminal justice reform. I think Ross's sentence was wild, and I'm so glad he's okay now. But ultimately, like, we need to pay a lot more attention to doing the bare minimum levels of making it harder to do mass surveillance. So in my case, there was this operation called Operation Animus. They love to name each big arrest as like an operation, right, with a code name. So at the time that I was running Silk Road 2, I put my full faith in Tor. I put all of my trust in one privacy technology to keep me safe. And that was a really bad idea. So at the time, the Tor project was being researched by Carnegie Mellon University, who they were running a bunch of nodes and doing a lot of things to try to identify Tor users for whatever reason, right? Like cool academic research paper, or like, whatever the incentives are for academics to do mass surveillance, right? And they succeeded at getting my IP addresses, IPs of a lot of my staff, and my servers. And once you know that, you can find any other dumb mistake that someone made along the way when setting a site up and file a criminal complaint. So this break of Tor is kind of what led me to really wanting to meet with the NIM project and hang with Harry, because Tor is an incredible human rights technology that I still really believe in, and I try to use. Like, my startup, we have a blockchain data API, and if you're building anything on crypto, you can actually access our API over a .onion hidden service on Tor. Like, I'm all about not logging IP addresses and practicing data minimization as a founder, right? Protecting the users. But something Tor doesn't do, which I believe is the bare minimum, is they actually never ask their users not to log or not to invade each other's privacy. And I think it's an Assange quote where, essentially, like, I believe in privacy for the weak and transparency for the powerful. And in decentralized networks, it's the server operators that are ultimately the powerful. And I don't really want server operators. Like, as a user, at some point my freedom was at risk, and my server operators in the Tor network failed me. They were Carnegie Mellon University, and my IP was connected to their guard nodes or whatever happened. So it's very personal to me to advocate that projects should think of creative ways to at least get server operators to agree not to log IP addresses and user traffic, which, of course, you're going to get bad actors that do it anyways. But I promise you, it's going to filter out any institution that is a serious player and is the most likely to compromise your network in the first place, because they have a legal department. And this is something that was a bit appalling to me as someone who is arrested due to Tor being compromised, is that Tor never, sued Carnegie Mellon or even, in my opinion, had a way to, because they never even asked their node operators not to log, right? So by having some sort of terms of service, which, when you think about it, that's ultimately what code is, right? Like, cypherpunks write code, and code is very similar to law. So we can get really good at code, but we can kind of forget about doing the bare minimum of, like, let's make sure we have kind of our community's standards codified in law, where we can go after a bad actor if they break these standards. And by then it's too late for the individual that lost their freedom or maybe their life. But if we're here building a technology for human rights, hopefully to protect activists and enable, like, incredible things to happen here on Earth safely, we need to be able to go after bad actors. And that's where kind of this concept of, like, a terms of service really came from.
A quick question, just to clarify. So that was a bit theoretical. Let's put this in practice. What if I have the NIM network and I don't have a TOS? What happens? How is that different from where I do have a TOS? In what situations does that change things?
Yeah, you really have to think of your user profiles, right? Like, why is someone running a NIM server or a Tor server? The vast majority, I'd like to think, are people that are actually trying to help NIM and Tor users to have privacy. You're donating your bandwidth. NIM has this cool reward structure and staking structure, which is great. I'm a big NIM fan. I'm trying to build on NIM right now for my startup. So, but if you don't even ask someone not to log, you're inviting a new type of user persona, and that is people trying to raise their own status as academics, publishing a cool research paper, maybe presenting it as a vulnerability at Black Hat or DEF CON. And then also investigators and prosecutors that want to build their career and have really big cases. And it is a lot more straightforward to get court approvals to do wide scale surveillance when you don't know where a user lives, right? Like, American citizens have a lot of protections. But if you can't even tell that someone's an American citizen, it's easier to convince an American decision maker, like a judge, to approve a crazy thing, right? And the same is for academic institutions. It's like this really cool privacy technology we've built, and the emergence of these networks where you can not know where a server is, know where a user is, but the parties can still connect, actually opens the door to this weird new user persona of someone that's really driven to log as much data as possible and to either monetize it. In Chainalysis's case, it's leaked that they've done that with Monero nodes, like and a lot of blockchain light wallet nodes, where they host them and they log a lot of IP addresses. Extremely unethical, in my opinion. Or like someone trying to build their career as an academic or as a member of law enforcement.
So I'd
Nice
like
question.
to ask I'd like to ask a quick question.
Go ahead.
Or just maybe provide a little bit quick background. So what you're saying is that if I'm a law enforcement agency and or university or whatever, but let's assume law enforcement agency, and the terms of service do not allow me to log, I can't log, or I could log and not use the evidence in court. What is your understanding of the matter?
Yeah, I'm not a lawyer and I am a US citizen.
Yeah,
so
but just
my understanding is kind of based on US stuff. But the more hurdles you can make a lawyer have to jump over to do something, whether it's a lawyer for a university that's trying to approve some weird research project to log all NIM users' traffic, or it's a AUSA, like a federal prosecutor, trying to make sure that an investigation is completely above board so that they can maintain their 98% conviction rate and have very clean evidence at trial. You want as many hurdles as possible when building something to protect users, to ensure that users aren't logging each other's traffic or doing malicious things. And it is not ideal to even have a terms and service in place, but I see it as an artifact of the world we live in and the existing institutions and the court systems that are in place that actually can work to protect our users, if we get more savvy as cypherpunks and lean in a bit more to using the law to retroactively enforce violations of our privacy policies. Essentially, we need to have a privacy policy.
Yeah, I mean, it's been very effective for the Free Software Foundation. I would say, in an ideal world, we wouldn't even need NIM because there wouldn't be surveillance and control mechanisms baked into the internet, so to speak, and the internet wouldn't be able to abuse people's privacy and security so easily. But given the reality we live in, we still need software like NIM and Tor. Sorry, Sudo, go for it.
Actually, you sort of answered my question. I can ask it though, because you mentioned the cypherpunk ethos quite a bit, and obviously NIM is a direct part of direct outcome of the lineage of the cypherpunk movement. And in this movement, we have cypherpunks write code, right? So it's cryptography, like rights ensured via cryptography and code. And it's just I'm guessing our community is a very strong community, and we didn't get too many questions when the TOS was introduced prior to launching NymVPN. But we did get some, and I'm just guessing, or I'm just wondering, how is it? Are these concepts in conflict with each other, or is it fine? Like you said, Blake, to also ensure certain aspects of privacy, or ensure privacy in certain ways via the law, or is it just code only and cryptography? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'm a big believer that code is law, and I think law is code. I think they all go hand in hand. I think we're going to see the legal profession change like crazy over the next 5 to 10 years, both with AI, but also with more engineers getting more legally savvy, right? There probably are ways to build the engineering concepts that we've really developed and perfected in software and apply those to code, right? Like why not have a Nix OS, like a fully deterministic contract with building blocks that are each individually approved. I'm not a lawyer, that might be a terrible idea, but we need more engineers becoming lawyers for sure. So to me, I don't see any direct problem with the terms and conditions versus the Cypherpunk manifesto. I think it's also important to acknowledge that the Cypherpunk manifesto was written decades ago, and it's important for builders today we need to be able to continue that movement, but also basically be able to amend our constitution, so to speak, right, as times change. When the Cypherpunk manifesto was written, there's the internet, and I fully believe the internet's the primary communication method of today, but in times of war, or I hope this doesn't happen in our lifetimes, but we should fully expect the internet to not be neutral. Like, countries won't be able to access each other's IP space at some point. And that's one of the big fears for builders of decentralized networks today, including Bitcoin especially, is we have this huge assumption that like the internet's just going to keep working the way it does. And Harry made the point of, there's wide scale network surveillance happening on the internet, which like is probably happening. Like, I haven't seen that personally, more because it's so much easier for domestic law enforcement, at least, to just buy some off the shelf tools from surveillance companies. And that's really out of the reforms that came out of, the Snowden revelations and otherwise, of just how much mass surveillance the US government was doing. It's a lot harder for Western governments to actually do wide scale surveillance on their citizens, which is a huge asterisk. And then it's also a lot harder for, for us to really know what's even going on, right? Because I'm sure everything got way more compartmentalized after such a big whistleblowing event. So we should really plan for the worst and not assume the internet is safe. And we should not assume the internet will stay connected. And so these are big shifts versus when the manifesto was written, and the emergence of cryptocurrencies and like incredible math for privacy, like ZK snarks and all of this. So I think we are perfectionists as builders. We try to think of like, okay, what is the 100% like safe best way to build something, but we often forget to do the first 10% of work, such as just ask your users not to like hurt each other.
Exactly. Now, I wanted to, since you brought up the Cypherpunk manifesto, I linked it in chat, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, if you're interested. It's one of like the foundational documents of our movement, if I do say so myself. Now, it's been a hot minute, right? Like you said, it's been 33 minutes, 33 years since the Cypherpunk manifesto was released. It's almost as old as I am. And I wonder what else has changed since then. So is there any other way or any other aspect in which we should update the Cypherpunk manifesto? Asking you, Harry, as well, just as much as Blake.
Mm-hmm. Well, Blake, you should go first.
Yeah, I mean, the big shifts we've seen in a lot of our lifetimes is the emergence of the internet, of course, which was around then. But then cryptocurrency is a huge technological advancement. And then now AI, which is kind of leapfrogged crypto in the hype cycle. But I think AI and crypto go very hand in hand. And I'm a big believer in AI agents, which really just means computers. I'm a very big believer in rights for computers, where I think computers getting rights to privacy and to hold and spend money and to kind of exist jurisdictionless or wherever they need to be, is a really huge emerging topic. Like, where does an agent live? And where does it like pay taxes and all of that, if at all, right? So I think that's the Wild West that we're building in now. And NIM may find that maybe NIM is the safest way for bots to communicate across the internet, right? Because you can actually pay for NIM using cryptocurrency, and cryptocurrency is, I think, for sure the native asset of bots, right? Like, I fully believe if bots are using crypto, that makes it safer for all the humans using crypto because it increases that anonymity set, right? So if a bot can go and buy something anonymously, the bot has to be able to buy something anonymously, right? That shakes up the way that business is done today, where the default is to ask for someone's shipping address or their zip code or their email or their Visa, right? Like a credit card, which no bot's ever going to get, like a bank account or a credit card, right? So crypto's the native way. And I think just as governments are racing to, well, they're moving very slowly to try to adopt laws and understand these huge leaps in technology of cryptocurrency and AI. I think us builders building at the leading edge of it need to also just like stay innovative and not assume that that our manifesto is the last word when it comes to why we exist and why we're building what we're building.
Yeah. So what I would like to just point out really quickly is, in terms of the Cypherpunk manifesto, it's very short, so it's an enjoyable read. But it was also, I think, very framed in, again, the beginning of the internet. And now we're reaching a kind of more mature level. And the whole goal of the Cypherpunks Manifesto was to protect merely, I would say, use code to protect individual privacy and rights. And what we've seen is that actually as entire societies become dependent on the internet, that this concept of using cryptography and code to defend rights becomes much more important, and not merely an individual. Again, things that were unimaginable, like cutting the internet, was cut again. Egypt 2011, cut recently in Iran. These things were unimaginable at the time, and these hurt vast groups of people. And so rather than just building code to protect ourselves as cypherpunks, I think we also have to build the code and the cryptography to like defend our entire society and everyone, really. So I think if anything, the missions become more important. It needs to become more political, more universal. Now I was thinking, like, when I was at MIT when the Snowden revelations happened, and Snowden gave a talk, and there was a lot of discussion amongst various people, particularly people in the computer science department were very supportive of Snowden. And then I remember going to a meeting about some revelations, unfortunately, the Harvard Law Department. And the Harvard Law Department, I think, is probably, there's a lot of, I would say, sophistry there. They really teach people how to argue in a very clever manner, because I guess that's what law school lets you do. And it's also the kind of place where the NSA's like legal advisor would hang out. And so the NSA's legal advisor came by and said, well, look, actually, all of this is legal. All of this NSA stuff, it's perfectly legal, because if, we're just spying on foreign citizens, we're not spying on Americans. I guess in American law, foreigners have no rights. And then furthermore, he said, yeah, for the stuff that seems really bad, we actually outsource that to the British. And therefore, like, that, wasn't, somehow was legal because the Brits were doing it and the Americans weren't. And then another thing he said that was very interesting, and I think I'm not sure if there's any conclusive proof of this in court cases. There was someone from, someone said, well, what happens if I'm just doing a kind of mass surveillance capture of the internet, and I run into, I get evidence of a crime, maybe, I don't know, drug dealing or murder. I read someone's email, I'm looking for trade secrets or whatever it is, NSA, NSA's at the time was aimed primarily at other nation states. But I find something that, someone should be alerted for, but it's not really the NSA's job. And he said, yeah, well, we would have to somehow flag the FBI or the Department of Justice in this case. And then that's an interesting question, because I guess the question is that through mass surveillance, the NSA, or I guess today probably more likely Palantir, would get some data on someone, maybe by accident, maybe just by virtue of just doing mass data capture and machine learning, and that the results of data would be useful, but not exactly to them. And because they captured it while, I guess, operating under some separate legal mandate or doing something that they would have to hand that data to the actual prosecutor, but maybe pretend that they didn't get that data. And I think that's a question. And in legal terms, I believe that's parallel construction. So I'm the FBI. I got some data from the NSA that, someone's selling drugs. I would like to prosecute that drug dealer, but I can't reveal the source as the NSA, because the NSA wasn't supposed to be spying on Americans to begin with, or drug dealing is not really within their purview. So what I would just I would pretend that somehow I discovered this as the FBI legally. And I think that's called a parallel construction argument. I would have to invent a parallel universe where the prosecutor discovered these facts, even though in reality they were discovered through digital mass surveillance. What would happen in this case? Could the terms of service help prevent that? Is there anything you can do to prevent these kind of parallel construction arguments as well?
We'll never be able to prevent parallel construction, which is, I think, a human nature thing, right? I think ultimately privacy technologies, there's a lot of ways to define them, but I see them as like a privacy technology helps an activist avoid a court case. Ultimately, we're trying to like not get in trouble and just be able to have freedom of speech and use communications freely, whether it's the internet or something else. So, lawyers bluff. Like court cases are poker, and it's never in a lawyer's interest to reveal their full hand. Like I look at it as selective disclosure. So on the prosecution side, they don't want to reveal, the weak parts of their case potentially, and they don't want to reveal any massive investigative wins that are happening, maybe some technological means or
so like they wouldn't want to reveal they have access to mass surveillance capabilities or some other sort of capability.
Yeah, you want to think about incentives, right? Like what is a prosecutor really trying to do with their life? Maybe they want a big career remaining a prosecutor, or maybe they have some political ambitions, and no one wants outcry. So if a third-party vendor is doing extremely unethical research, or maybe subpoenaed some university and got a stack of ridiculously spicy data, like in my case, that leads to arrests. As a lawyer, your job is to protect your client and to give your client the smallest possible surface area for a case to be attacked. Now, for a prosecutor, their client is the US government. So they're presenting a case that's going to try to reveal the least amount of information possible about how someone was caught. And that's always going to be their incentive. They got to win the case, but not reveal what's working investigatively, like it or not. And I personally don't like it at all that private companies are able to do the types of mass surveillance that the US government is not allowed to do directly. And they're able to monetize that data, right? How much have different companies made money off of selling Bitcoin's transaction history and shared inputs and like tracing tech, right? They're monetizing our financial history. So on the defense side, there's selective disclosure too. As a defense attorney, there's amazing confidentiality between you and your client, and you can really fully understand what your client's actually done, and definitely selectively disclose the bits that protect your client. You're not going to tell the full story and share every single bit of irrelevant stuff and discovery and like that. So that is parallel construction on both sides, and that's just how the courts work. It can definitely be improved. We've gone through massive leaps in technology in the past few decades, but we're still very antiquated in our criminal justice system in America, at least, with really archaic, like medieval punishment that just enact society's vengeance on someone. They really have no intent to actually reform anyone, in my opinion. It's just pure like torture. Like me being thrown into solitary confinement immediately after my arrest as like a techie that's like never done anything violent, and it's just designed, the system's designed to break you, and it certainly did. Like any inmate or former inmate that tells you that they've never been suicidal is just like fronting and making that up. Like and my heart goes out to like the millions of inmates in America, especially a lot of the recent ones with, I don't want to get too political, but I'm very frustrated with my country's criminal justice system, and we could think of something better. So to me, like parallel construction is just another artifact of how broken the criminal justice system is. But at the same time, it's human nature. The law is ultimately, a prosecution versus a defense. Each is presenting their case and they're trying to win. And when you get humans trying to win at things, they will do anything. You get the most competitive people in those roles. And of course, they're not going to play their full hand and show you like everything they've got.
And then like, I don't know, maybe you should go for the next question, Sudo.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add here, just to be very explicit, we know for a fact, there's been research about this, that solitary confinement is torture. It's actual torture, so it should be outlawed all over the world. And there's no question about that. Just, my personal position. And I think this is the right one, like objectively so. So sorry you went through that. That's absolutely horrible. I wanted to ask, since both of you guys mentioned private companies, I wanted to ask about this a little bit. So we've known for a long time, and it's been happening for a long time, that, for example, the FBI is buying personal data collected by data brokers, through online surveillance, and they have been using that data for all kinds of investigations. So that's known, right? There is this interconnection of the immense amount of data harvesting that's happening on the private side, and of course the need for that data on the government side. And I just wanted to ask how you guys saw this evolve from the Snowden days, which was a long time ago now. I think the Snowden revelations came out in 2012, I believe. So it's been a hot minute since then. So how did this whole private company mediated or enabled surveillance evolved, especially now that since just during the past year, there was this rapid emergence of Palantir as which you mentioned, both of you mentioned a couple of times already, which is basically the private surveillance arm of the U.S. government. I think it's fair to say that. So how did this evolve, and what ramifications does this hold for us average people?
I want to add another note just on a more detailed level. I mean, Blake, what do you feel about, again, parallel companies, not parallel construction, private companies in terms of service? You said anything with a legal department might be worried about capturing user data through NIM if there was indeed a terms of service that would make it illegal to do so. Do you believe that companies like Palantir would just, have to at least think twice, if not collect the data if there was a terms of service, so that it would be illegal for them to run operators and catch the data? I mean, we wrote the terms of service with our law firm Goodwin in particular to really avoid this. I'll just quote what we say in the terms of service. We actually say, for each node operator has to agree legally that you will not collect, monitor, record, log, retain, or pass on to any third-party NIM node information or data relating to the activities of end users of NIM or the NymVPN services. Right. So that's, I think, hopefully stops a lot of this data recording and third-party selling. And I would point out that we do know this has happened. We know this happened to Tor. There was a big scandal where I think Team Kimru had this fellow called Rabbi Rob on Tor's board. And I know he did indeed capture, I think his company captured and sold Tor user data to the US government. But again, I guess it's not illegal because there's no terms of service. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah. So I see trust as consistency built over time. And a real challenge I had running Silk Road 2 was hiring a staff. I hired 12 staff members all anonymously. And, at one point, I realized that at least 3 of them were the same person running multiple accounts, collecting multiple salaries. It's like, and the amount of effort I had to go into to even find that out was ridiculous. It's like a whole TED talk right there, like how to hire anonymously. But I see it as a similar problem, right? Where anytime an entire community is able to wear masks and I love anons, right? I think it's extremely important that we're able to publish anonymously on the internet. But the more anonymous server operators are, the more you open the door to profiteers, right? And it sucks. This is just the time we're living in. So in terms of the Snowden revelations and how things have changed or whatever, unfortunately, I think the Snowden revelations got the attention of a lot of profiteers that were like, oh, the US government won't be able to do this anymore. So let's start a business that can. And that's kind of how I categorize Palantir and that whole cohort is, human nature, unfortunately, there's a lot of greed in it. So when we have servers that hopefully, look, I love anonymity for as many members of a network as possible. And I'm supportive. I actually haven't caught up on what you guys are doing with TOS today, but I'm supportive for just full-on user freedom. So I'm a big contributor to Zcash, and I'm working towards, for Zcash server operators, for light wallet operators, having an optional terms of service where when you're connecting to a server, you can decide, like, am I going to connect through one where there's 2 levels? There's a TOS that's accepted by like a username signed cryptographically, which is like, okay, what is that? You could have a bot do that. Or like full on KYC for a server operator that only the Zcash Foundation or someone holds, which that's extremely controversial and not ideal. But it really just comes down to, if there's not recourse for breaking a rule, people of extremely powerful entities will break it. So would a TOS stop Palantir or Chainalysis or whomever from running a bunch of NIM nodes and logging traffic and trying to monetize that data? No, but it at least puts the bare minimum of a barrier in place, to where there can be recourse if it's discovered, if there's a good person that whistleblows on that, and your project hopefully has a good legal war chest to go after someone that breaks your TOS. The TOS is useful, but it's also like trash if you can't actually chase someone down in the civil courts for breaking it. We don't have the benefit of the criminal courts with like massive taxpayer resources to go after someone. If you have a contract with your users, a terms of service or privacy policy or whatever, but neither party is willing to actually drag the other party to court or even knows how to, they don't even know where the user is or who they are, the TOS might as well not exist. So that's why for Zcashers, I'm really trying to figure out like maximum user freedom. Like, look, if you just want to connect through all nodes, that's fine. If you want to connect through a TOS node, or like the extreme of like my nodes that I run, I will put my name on them and I will get them audited by a security company that I would never log user traffic. And that's extremely personal to me because that's how I lost 10 years of my life, right? So to answer your question, there will always be bad actors. And a lot of those bad actors will be powerful entities trying to monetize your users' data. But if you don't even ask them not to, they are even more attracted. They're like, oh, this is an easy platform to get some data that we can sell, and we can push activists that we're trying to identify onto this technology because we've completely compromised it. I have no doubt that while Tor was compromised, all sorts of actors across the world were encouraging targets to use Tor. It's like, all right, if you use Tor during that period of time, you doxed your IP address.
All right, fascinating conversation, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for your thoughts. On paper, we should be jumping into the Q&A, but I wanted to open up for closing remarks. If you wanted to add anything, Blake and Harry, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to. I'll just finish off really quickly on my side. I would like to thank you, Blake, for bringing up the issue of I never thought about terms of services. From NIM's perspective, we don't want to KYC node operators. We think people should have the right to run nodes anonymously and to run nodes quickly in an emergency situation. Might need to spin up some nodes. We obviously have cases where people need privacy and internet access very quickly. And I do think forcing people to KYC is in general against the cypherpunk ethos. That being said, people could. We haven't really thought about that. We did make it so the terms of service are agreed to by virtue of kind of putting in a command line parameter, which is not on by default in your node. The US lawyer said that was indeed contractually binding. We do maintain a lot of lawyers, particularly in the US and Switzerland, and a few other countries like France, where they've been kind of aggressively maybe anti-crypto, and of course the UK. We could extend as needed. And, we would kind of go after anyone that we discovered violated our terms of service to basically harvest and de-anonymize users. Now, that being said, we do encourage, similar to Tor, academics to attack our system. In fact, our own staff does it more than anyone else. So if you've looked at any of the research coming out, I have some work with Carmela Troncoso of EPFL and Anya and Simon and one of her students. Eric really drove this work looking at, can we use deep learning algorithms to figure out, even if you're using NIM or using Tor, which website you're going to, that's going to result in cover traffic improvements to NIM. That paper should be out in July. Claudia's done a lot of what you call end-to-end correlation attacks, looking at machine learning attacks, if both the gateway, entry and exterior control, what can you do? How can we fix that? Now we're seeing researchers like Matt Green, who's also behind Zcash, doing attacks on NIM's reputation systems. Now, what we at NIM prefer to do is, if you're an academic or researcher, or just a white hat hacker interested in privacy and anonymity, we want you to attack our system. And then what we do is we offer basically a very basic bug bounty. And we also, if you're a researcher, we actually will work with you, give you access to resources. We do not want researchers to attack the live net. We do have them in general. They can, of course, do things to the live net, which are not, I guess, in terms of service. They want to do more complex attacks where they control nodes. We do those on what's called a test net, and we have a test net which any academic or really anyone can access to perform these kinds of attacks and test their effectiveness. And then when we get the results of those attacks, we fix a network. We really learned this methodology from Tor. Tor has done this very successfully to harden their system over the last 10, 20 years. And Roger, the co-founder of Tor, he's still upset that he believes that Carnegie Mellon abused their trust by doing this work to de-anonymize Tor on behalf of the U.S. government. But we do nonetheless think that it's better to attack this to make it better than not. But we want to do this in a way which makes NIM better and doesn't hurt users. I guess my last thing I would note is I do think, in terms of service, it's a little controversial, but I'm glad you can explain that logic. But I just want to ask a question. If you had a service that had a terms of service like NIM versus terms of service, I think like Zcash or Tor that didn't have terms of service, would you believe, would even Palantir's legal department, would they have to think twice before attacking the service, breaking this terms of service? Would you feel more? So they would have, it would kind of it would at least be flagged before they could attack, and that might discourage these attacks. And then, as someone who did engage in very dangerous activity, would you be interested? You would prefer services with terms of service in general, or not?
It's a new concept. Look, the terms of service thing is for good reason controversial, and a bunch of me just cringes at it. Yet I'm still advocating for it, right? I think it really is just a side effect of us building within the systems that we have on Earth today. And maybe someday we don't need it, but for now, the courts actually are a very powerful tool that we can actually use to protect our users. And big entities do get afraid of breaking rules, and it's the big entities that you really want to be the most afraid of, right? And in terms of encouraging academics to research your network, I really want to differentiate cryptographic and kind of code research versus there are types of research I'm sure NIM would not allow, such as, hey, if anyone wants to run a bunch of nodes and log all of the traffic and post that data openly for anyone to try to break, there are types of research that are just not ethical. And I really, as my closing remarks, would like to really strongly encourage any academics or anyone investigating anything to just be really careful about what data you store. I've done a lot of bad mouthing of Carnegie Mellon, which is easy for me to do. But I actually don't believe that the people involved in that research project intended for any users of Tor to get hurt. I believe that they wanted a really cool talk at Black Hat and try to further their academic careers, which it surely has done. But be very careful about the data you have around, right? Practice data minimization. If you're storing data, always be thinking, if this were in the hands of these people's adversaries, what would happen to those people? And that even includes connecting flights, right? Maybe you're a researcher, you've logged a bunch of traffic and whatever, and maybe it's the IP addresses of Chinese activists or whatever, and you're about to do a connecting flight through Hong Kong or something. You really should treat all data as toxic waste and just try to avoid keeping data around. Carnegie Mellon was able to respond to the U.S. government subpoena for all of, presumably, I never saw the subpoena, but as my IP address at least was raked up in that, and their Black Hat talk got canceled, right? So they got a gag order, to my knowledge. So be careful with the data you store. There's real humans using this technology, and also finally, it is not lost to me at all that that most people have not gotten the outcome that I got, and I thankfully had hundreds of people praying for me. Like, look, I'm a Christian and I believe in God. But I had also this technical skill set when I entered jail of already having 10 years of software engineering experience that most people do not have when they enter jail. So I want more inmates to get the opportunity that I got, and I want vast reform of the criminal justice systems around the world.
I would say that I think that that's really reassuring. I agree with those sentiments. I myself was put in jail. I mean, this is years ago for protesting and not anything particularly involving any online activities, but in the UK, the US, protesting the Iraq War, hilariously. And in Copenhagen, I would say the U.S. jails are by far the worst, and I'm shocked anyone can survive in them. When it's really abusive. When Ross Ulbricht did get out of jail, you were there as well. He did give a talk at Bitcoin Vegas, which I do think people should listen to, about the importance of decentralization. And I was also giving a talk at Bitcoin Vegas. I did manage to give him an NymVPN free pass. So who knows what, hopefully gave it a shot. I think we should probably move to Q&A if there is any. And if there's not, if you want to do a quiz or whatever, I'm cool with that too.
Yep, there are questions. So thanks for those closing remarks. Actually, a really fascinating conversation grew out of it. So thanks to both of you. Are you fine staying a bit over so that we can address all the questions? We have about eight of them. Is it okay? Or should we be quick?
I'm good. This is extremely important. Human rights.
Excellent. All right, let's get into it then. Thanks for your questions as always, our dear community. First one is from Jason. Are you saying Tor alone is unsafe? I think this is in response to when you explained how Tor operators don't, sign or don't accept a TOS.
So on my side, I will never trust a single privacy technology ever again. It's a personal thing, right? So I don't use Tor assuming that it's safe. I don't use anything assuming that it's safe.
Yeah, I would say as a general rule of thumb, nothing is safe forever and nothing is safe by itself. We at NIM defend the network layer. We defend that layer as best we can. We do think we're better than everything else due to at least on anonymous mode. Fast mode is effectively, I think, more or less equivalent to Tor. But we do recommend, remember, when you're defending yourself on the network level, you still need to defend yourself at the app level. So you can use apps like Signal on top of NIM. You can use, privacy enhanced domain services, domain names. You should be careful what operating systems you're running. If you're running Windows or easy to hack, or Androids, they're much easier to 0-day. Our goal long-term is to create a secure and privacy enhanced full stack. And we're working with a few other big companies, which we'll do discussions with later in the Web3 space to make this reality, and a few kind of well-known nonprofits. That being said, it's a long road, and we just want people to be as, safe as possible, but you still have to use common sense.
Yeah. Thanks for those answers, and great question, Jason. Moving on to the next one from our beloved Rocio. Thank you for the question. How can activists in repressive regimes protect themselves from undercover infiltration when the technology they rely on is only as strong as the people who manage it? I think this is a great question. I'm not sure who should start.
I can dive in. So to me, I actually love that I have worked with the FBI. It's one of those data points where I have to architect things to where I don't have to be trusted at all. I do believe that technology can be architected in a way where it removes as much of the human trust layer as possible. And I love it when people distrust me. Like, I no longer work with the FBI in any capacity. But when someone's like, why should we connect to your server or use your thing? I'm like, oh, that's a really good point. I should make sure to architect things to use end-to-end encryption and further technologies to make sure that I couldn't even compromise users. If the gun were pointed at my head again, and thankfully I wasn't able to do it back then, but the gun pointed at my head definitely convinced me, to cooperate. And I think that can happen to any builder in this space. Like, it's the $5 wrench attack. It's cheaper to buy a wrench these days. You can really force someone to do pretty much anything. by taking away their freedom. And then that's the monopoly of violence that only governments can really pull off.
The ultimate wrench attackers, right? Governments. They have all the wrench attacking power in the world, literally. Thanks for that answer. Anything to add there, Harry, or should we move on to the next one?
We can move to the next question. We got a lot.
All right. Thank you for your question, Rocio. I see you sent a bunch of others, so we'll get to those as well. Don't worry. Next one is from Ginny. Thanks for the question. If you had NIM in Silk Road days, how would things be different? Great question.
Yeah, it's a fun question. I mean, ultimately, I would have still gotten caught, right? So I was using Tor and Bitcoin recklessly. I had no idea what OPSEC was. I was this builder, I dropped college to move to San Francisco and do startups. And as happens, most of them fail and you get really discouraged. So I saw Silk Road as like, whoa, I've finally built something that people are using. Like we got millions of users, and that was very validating. I knew I could always do that. But I was just, connecting to Tor in reckless ways. And if I weren't caught by Tor being compromised, I have no doubt I would have been caught by the traceability of Bitcoin or any number of other things. Like one of those 12 staff members I hired was a Homeland Security, like ICE agent. So yeah, I would have gotten caught. And ultimately, I'm glad that I got caught because it allowed me to kind of end that phase of my life in the most honest possible way and to move forward, like to not live with this big secret hanging over my shoulders and however much Bitcoin that like inevitably I would have gotten caught at any time. It's great that Band-Aid got pulled off only 1 year after launching it.
Yep. NIM is just one slice of the privacy stack, ladies and gentlemen. So it can't solve everything, obviously. It was a special thanks for the question, Ginny, because I wanted to ask so much more about Silk Road, but unfortunately we ran out of time. Maybe I'll have you back one day, Blake, and then we can discuss it in a bit more detail. So thanks for the for the Silk Road question, Ginny. Let's move on to the next one, also from Rocio. She says, the FBI didn't break Tor, they broke the people running it. How can activists in our region stay safe when the weakest link in our privacy isn't the software but human infiltration? I guess this kind of dovetails very well with the previous question Rocio asked.
Yeah, I mean, I think a real benefit to decentralization, like we've got to get more international builders contributing to Tor and to NIM and all of these crucial critical privacy technologies. Builders in spaces that have experienced actual nation state level surveillance that a lot of people in Western countries it's like still unfathomable to us. And that's a real flaw, like when we're building stuff. So we don't have the personal experience of like, oh yeah, your government can come like take you away because of what you did on the internet, like the same day. So I think the FBI didn't break Tor. They didn't break people running it. Tor allows anyone to join their ecosystem without agreeing to never log, right? And that's where I think terms of services are the bare minimum. Is if you have a wide door to where long-standing trusted community members are essentially getting the same amount of traffic and trust as someone that just showed up with like 200 servers, that's dangerous for your users.
Thanks for that answer. Next up, I'm gonna grab a question from Bikram. It's a two-part question, so I'm going to show both messages on screen. So Bikram starts by saying, what's your opinion on the agentic developer? People work hard to learn the basics of development, and now agentic systems seem to be killing the motivation to learn. So the question is, what do you think? Where does our future as developers stand in this era of automation? I picked this specifically because I know that you have quite an extensive background in software development, so I'm guessing you have some thoughts on this topic.
Yeah, wow. The way that I've built software has completely changed in the past 2 years, and it's shifting everyone's mindset around engineering. I think as someone that's managed teams and like is kind of like I'm a founder, so I'm used to speccing things out and kind of providing feedback rather than being an individual contributor. It's a very natural flow to communicate with AI, with agentic developers. But like the tools aren't fully there yet. We still need humans, of course, reviewing code, and everything is changing. There's no doubt. And I think the future for developers stands in our human context. I think as long as software is being built for humans to use, humans will be the best ultimate like product managers and people defining what is built and how it's built. But I'm sure there will be software developed by agents for agents at some point. And I'm passionate about agents being able to make money and to spend money, because agents are the ultimate unbanked population. Like, we don't know how many agents are on Earth, and the number's growing like crazy. So to me, agents getting the right to transact anonymously trickles down to us humans. You know, I don't know if we're deprecated yet, but humans we haven't been able to pull off the right to earn and spend money 24/7 anonymously. So I actually love the potential for the privacy that agents get inherently by not being able to KYC, trickling down to all of us getting more privacy.
That's a good point. Go ahead, Harry. You were about to say something.
Yeah, I would just like to point out, you know, we at NIM, I mean, we do, particularly some of our coders do use a lot of AI, but we restricted the front end development mostly, and we do, you know, we do have internally, AI is tricky, right? So I think for certain kinds of development work, particularly where that work already exists in large amounts on GitHub and stuff, so you can't statistically build from that, it's quite good. When you're dealing with like cryptography, particularly security and privacy, it's very subtle. So we do not use AI in the design of, say, you know, so yeah, sure, we'll use it in the design of our web page. We will not use it in the design of NymVPN itself. So, for example, when we're designing like a new key exchange protocol or going to post-quantum key exchange, we still do all that very much hands-on. And same, like even myself, I was looking at code yesterday for to speed up NymVPN's kind of startup, and there's still very much a place for human intelligence saying, oh, look at that buffer. I wonder if an enemy could flip a bit on that buffer. Maybe that could cause a privacy violation, or be used to tag people's packets so they can track those packets down. So I think there's certain things where AI is very good and certain things where it's not so good. And a lot of building any complex system is knowing what tool is good for what part.
Exactly. And I would add just one final thought on this, that I'm guessing AI will get there inevitably. Yeah. So it will become, it is becoming increasingly powerful in development, and is doing things now that, we couldn't even imagine it doing, just a short few years ago. But you do still hear a lot of those catastrophic situations due to vibe coding. I could list a whole bunch, not going to. So, for the time being, I think you should be careful with implementing AI. And as Harry mentioned, you should really pick which parts of your code base are fine to be touched by AI. All right, thanks for those answers. Moving on to the next question. This is gonna be a little bit of a tougher one, but I really like the question. So here it is. This is also from Rocio, who's a NIM community contributor, beloved NIM community contributor from Latin America. She's asking, why does a US-based operator get a second life as a tech CEO, while a Latin American activists are permanently blacklisted for their digital history? Rehabilitation is a privilege for those who co-op with the state.
Yeah, I'll repeat that the U.S. criminal justice system is not currently designed for reform. It's designed for society's vengeance on the person, and really just the powerful's, vengeance. And like, my heart is completely broken for the number of activists suffering right now. Like, it's an embarrassing time to be an American. It's messed up. So I have gone through a lot of like survivor's guilt personally. I met so many inmates, like some really incredible people, and knowing that the vast majority of them won't get the opportunity that I got due to coming from a white middle class software engineering background is absolutely privilege, and is just further signs that this whole system needs to be turned upside down and reinvented. Like, we need a new criminal justice system for sure. And the rehabilitation I got was I was scared straight the moment of my arrest, right? Like, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm never doing that again. Which, from meeting hundreds of inmates, that's the case for almost every single one of them, right? Like, most people in the system are not going to make another mistake. They just want to be able to hug their kids and live with their family.
And I would just like to make one point here, which is, mass surveillance capabilities are still fairly centralized geopolitically, right? So the U.S. obviously has them, Palantir has them. Some extent, probably Russia and China. Europe is trying to get them, mostly via legal means and forcing the telcos to do it. Even Switzerland is looking at the problem, and we'll have more calls on that as it develops. And then what you see often is you see other countries, particularly countries in the global south, want to get those capabilities and are indeed building those kinds of capabilities, particularly through subcontracts to private companies. So, you'll see, I don't know every country in detail, but we have seen, for example, the obvious case of in Mexico City, Pegasus spyware, NSO Group, which is an Israeli spyware firm, did a deal with Pegasus, and they put in like a random sample of like journalists and activists, like 20% of them had their phones 0-dayed by Pegasus spyware. Who knows how many are being monitored? Probably most, if not more. So I would argue that what we're seeing is these capabilities to do surveillance and other kinds of attacks are formally like constrained to the NSA. And some people said, oh, well, NIM is a bit paranoid. Why would you build something that's only against the most powerful actor? But those capabilities are becoming usable by more and more different nation states, different actors, different private companies, all sorts of folks, and that's dangerous. And we have to, we have to build tools like NIM to defend ourselves. We also realize that activists outside the United States, I've been put in jail in the U.S. not nearly as long as Blake, but it's no fun. And seeing the kinds of surveillance and infiltration that goes on there is terrible. But what's even worse is we see a lot of people from the global south get killed, get imprisoned for life. I had a friend killed in Mexico not that long ago, over activism. One of the reasons we built NIM was watching even what the UK and the US did to Julian Assange, but also watching what the government of Bashar al-Assad did to my good friend Basil Safadi, who was a Mozilla core contributor and later activist in the beginning of the Syrian revolution. And then he was indeed imprisoned and murdered, shot while transferring between prisons by the Assad regime. So, we there's different threat models for everyone. And I think it behooves us as technologists, because we do work on this space, not just to build the kinds of technologies that people need that can help defend them and defend their sovereignty and rights. And this includes digital cash, but also includes things like anonymous communication channels.
Yeah, something I want to highlight in this comment quickly too is that people are permanently blacklisted for their digital history, and we kind of forgot to touch on that. So one of the most shocking parts, of course, of a very traumatic experience of getting arrested, spending time in jail, but then getting released after I'd really given up on my life, and it was its own traumatic whirlwind to actually be okay when so many people are not. It was surreal that I couldn't open a bank account, and I couldn't get any like KYC entity to work with me. I had to be cash only, and it took me about 4 years to finally be banked again. And that is due to a credit score type product that consumers don't have a right to see, that's based on bad press. Like there's no report I could see. Like you ask a bank why your account's been shut down. Of course, they don't give you a reason, and they take 30 days or so, and they mail your money back in the form of a check. Or so you got to go like open another bank account somehow to like even get your money back. So I'm actually very grateful that I got to experience being unbanked for a bit, because there are so many people around the world that are unbanked, and it's really driven me like to advocate for them. And to me, like all of my unbanking experience was due to how our internet activity is being scraped and monetized, and that's like a whole ad tech and surveillance tech around communications. But that whole wave is going to happen to internet money, to Bitcoin, to all of our financial transactions, right? And we have to race to build and to educate people. We have to build away from using public blockchains, because what used to be, oh, you're digitally blacklisted in Latin America due to what you might have tweeted or posted somewhere, which is terrible, and your life might be in danger from that. But that's gonna go from that into like, oh, you're blacklisted based on where you spent your money, which of course has already happened to former Silk Road users. Like that's a cluster that's tagged in every tracing product that exists, and it is a way that I really failed my users. But there wasn't a great privacy chain around back then. So I'm a huge advocate for using Zcash, and that's why I'm a huge contributor over there.
I think that's actually a perfect place to wrap up. We are also huge fans of Zcash, as you may know from previous community calls. Of course, we've had guests from Zcash. We have a bunch of workflows. We're working on a bunch of things together with Zcash, and very much agreed with everything you just said there. I will let you gentlemen go because I already took 30 minutes more of your time than was promised. Blake, big thanks for joining us today. I really hope to have you back and have a bit more of a less TOS focused and more Silk Road focused, and possibly also FathomX focused, which we never actually ended up talking about. We will drop a link to FathomX, which is Blake's new nascent project, which you should definitely check out. It's very interesting. So I'm happy to have you back, to talk about those things. Also, big thanks for the big boss Harry Halpin for jumping on today.
Yeah, and just so you know, we will do a roadmap session. As you may have noticed, we're still finishing up roadmap 2025. So we're running a little bit behind, as software always does. But we will expect a roadmap session, hopefully in February. Definitely before end of first quarter, outlining, I think, a very exciting new roadmap as soon as the VPN is up to date and up to par. We're still adding a few of the features in the 2025 roadmap. And I do want to say that we do have, I know the crypto markets are crashing. I think it's because probably the Fed didn't lower the interest rates and Trump put one of his friends up to run the Fed. So who knows what's going to happen in the US. But despite all of the dark news, NYM does have some pretty big, I would say, well-known people who are related to Zcash, let's say, coming in to help us out, and other software to build this kind of unified full privacy stack. So I think we're going to see a sort of second coming of the alliance behind NYM. When NYM launched, we had kind of, I think, a classic group of VCs behind us, and we're moving into the product space to really build these kind of products that people want. And a lot of people, I think I've only been public about CZ, but a lot of people have been very excited by this product and are seeing it, even though it could always be better, are seeing it as the future, not just for NYM, but for also this kind of wider desire to have a full stack solution for privacy. So also, I think we will try to do some sessions, which I'll join, on other part. We had a lot of questions about the terms of service. That's why we want to do this session, because Blake inspired it. We will also do a session on the terms of service to the user with, I think, Switzerland's most famous privacy lawyer who crafted that for us. And then we will also do a session on the privacy, the privacy statement of NYM, and exactly, I mean, NYM obviously is doing everything it can to make you private, but we also want to go over kind of GDPR and various legal obligations there that we have to you, and why NYM helps. And we'll have the privacy lawyers that crafted our privacy policy will also join that call. So there'll be 2 or 3 legal calls. I know they're not that exciting, but obviously this one's going to be the most exciting. But then we will, once that wraps up, push to the new roadmap, and then push to hopefully some really cool announcements. So,
all right. So in summary, ladies and gentlemen, another a call with Blake and 2 calls with Harry about a bunch of different topics that you just heard explained. So our roadmap is dropping soon. We're going to be doing an episode about that, and also our privacy policy and privacy statement, which I think they're not boring, Harry. I think these are important things, and also like a major means of transparency, which I really love about NYM. So looking forward to hosting you for those as well. With that, I am going to let you go, gentlemen. I will still have to say goodbye to the community and give them their POAP, which is a little bit of a tradition here at NYM. We give this little NFT to commemorate that people hung out with us today. So big thanks for joining. I'll have you back, both of you back, actually, hopefully soon. And yeah, big thanks for joining. Again, we are going to I will do this now. We will drop a link to FathomX in the chat. There it is. If you want.
Yeah, it's open source accounting software for Monero and Zcash. That's what we're building.
Which we also need that software to work because we are doing accounting for Monero and Zcash subscriptions. So. It is very hard. So we look forward to trying out Phantom X.
It is.
Awesome.
It is a surprisingly hard, big problem. So yeah, definitely solving a real one there. All right, ladies and gentlemen, and now all that's left to do is for me to give you your POA. Big thanks for joining us, and big thanks for the excellent questions to the audience. Drum roll. The secret phrase for today is going to be Emersonian, and that is a 0 over there. Not
Follow him on Twitter.
Yes, follow him on Twitter. Give him some love on Twitter, and you will meet him once again, of course, on one of these community calls. This is the handle, by the way, of Blake on Twitter, so make sure to check him out. The details are being sent in chat. Big thanks again for joining us. The last thing I will have to share with you guys, which I would really, really appreciate if you participated in, we are going to announce a survey about NymVPN when closing. This will give us a bit of guidance on how you guys are feeling about different features and interfaces of NymVPN. So this would help. The development greatly. So if you're an avid user of NymVPN, which I assume you are, and if you're not, then grab one of the links that we dropped in chat to try it for free. Please help us with this survey. It shouldn't take more than about 8 to 10 minutes to fill out, and it would help us greatly, to set the path for NymVPN going forward and to understand how you feel about what it looks like today and what it can do today. So big thanks for that. The links are going to be shared on the usual channels. So that's Matrix and Discord and Telegram. So keep an eye there. And yeah, that's basically it. That was Sudo, aka Simon, and of course Harry Halpin, the CEO and founder of Nym, and last but not least, Blake Benthall, the former operator of Silk Road and now the founder and CEO of FathomX. Hopefully you enjoyed this conversation. See you back for the next one. Have a lovely day, everyone. Bye.